This is a welcome everyone to another episode of Highlighting Greatness with Fisayo. I haven't dropped a podcast in months. I've had a lot going on, and I've actually had things recorded and ready to go, but I didn't want to drop anything until I did this. And this one is very special to me because it wouldn't be right if I didn't speak about and told you guys about a very dear and special person to me. And so with that being said, let's get started. This is about my grandmother. This episode is going to focus on her. Her name is Madame Onileola Animashaun, and she's my grandmother. Unfortunately, she passed in October 2021, and it's been very, very difficult for myself as well as my family. She was our matriarch, and was very close to her. She raised me since I was born, really, and so I really wanted to take this time to talk about her and do this for her and tell you guys a little bit more about who she was. My grandmother lived to be about 97 years old. She lived a great life. She lived a very amazing life, and throughout this, I'm gonna show some videos. I'm gonna put out some just a few clips just to show you guys the type of person that she was, and so you would understand how amazing she was and the type of bond that me and her had, the type of connection really that we've had since the beginning. And so a little bit about her. She was 97. And anyone that knew me knew about my grandmother. You just did. It wouldn't be too long that I would be talking to someone without mentioning my grandmother, because I was very, very proud of her and happy about her. She was amazing. Like I said, she raised me. She came to live with us when when I was born. My mom sent for her because I was very sickly as a child. And so that's where me and her started. She'd be taking care of me. She'd take me to school. I remember those days. She would walk me to school. Um, you know, anything I wanted, she'd try to get it for me. That's where we started. My grandmother was born in a small village called Ikoro Ekiti. And she was the daughter of a chief, actually, one of many children. And she actually, this is something that, my mom told me, or she said that the memorial service for her is that her mother, my grandmother's mother, died when she was very young. And so she really didn't grow up with a mother. And so she really had to grow up quickly and learn to fend for herself and take care of her siblings. I know one sibling in particular, her younger brother. Um, she always she would definitely take care of him. I don't know the age gap between them, but she kind of took responsibility for him early on. Um, there were a lot of things that I got to know about her, thankfully, that she told me herself in the last couple of years. One thing that I'm grateful for, um, as much as it hurts to not have her now, I'm very thankful that I had her as long as I did. 34 years she was with me. Um, and that's a blessing in and of itself. She she was amazing. So in the year 2020, no, in 2020 2019, I moved back in with my parents when I moved to Houston, and just for a little while before I settled and you know got my own place and all of that. And a little while turned into a year, and so I was there with them for um, yeah, just about a year. And little would I know, that I mean, of course, 2020 happened, the pandemic happened, and so much, happened in that last year. But little did I know that was gonna be one of my last years to really be around her. But while I was with her, and while we got to spend that time together, uh, we talked a lot, and she was an amazing person. I remember she told me about how much she worked. Um, Even my mom told me this. My mom, a few days back, is still grieving and still dealing with the loss of her mother, and so she was telling me how sad and down she was just because of how hard my grandmother worked for her, for my mother's sake. And I remember she telling me all of this stuff about how she had farms. She worked with her hands. She was a farmer. One funny thing about that, my grandmother, I remember one time she would look at my hands and basically tell me my hands were soft because I don't do manual work. Um, and she didn't, she didn't know that was, well, maybe she knew that was a diss, but she told me. But she was, she was, she was a hard worker. She She had farms. I didn't even know this until my grandmother told me, but the house that we her well, my grandparents' house that we would go to go see them when I was younger, I always assumed that it was my grandfather's house, but it was later on that my grandmother told me that no, she actually built the house. It was hers. She um she told me that when my mom called because my parents um came here to the States to go to school, and then they also had um, my siblings here before they relocated back to Nigeria and had me. And so she said that when my mom came back to Nigeria and told her, that she was coming back, or at least called her or sent her notice that she was coming back home, and now she has these two kids, that she was like, well, I gotta build a house. I have to build this place so that they can have somewhere to come to and have somewhere to stay. And so she worked. From there on, she really, really got to grinding, and um, she had farms. At a point, she had 5 farms, and she would go and work all day, come back, and still, sell things, make food, and sell to people just to have something for my mom, really, and for us. She worked very hard. I remember when I was living with my parents, my grandmother loved, um, she was very particular about her food. She ate the same things every day, and like for breakfast, it would be bread and some tea. And I remember one morning that the tea mix, it was like a coffee mate or something that she used to use to make her tea. It had finished, and she called me to go get her some more. Now, I was getting ready to go to work, maybe in a couple of hours or so, and so I was like, I really don't want to go, get something else, blah, 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 this or that. And, she kept asking me and asking me to go. And so finally I was like, fine. I went, got the stuff, came back, and brought it to her. And I'll never forget, she was in the kitchen, and I dropped it down on the freezer that's in the kitchen and told her, and, told her, here it is. And she looked at me and she said, well, isn't that why? Isn't this why? I'm like, what are you talking about? She was like, isn't this why I was doing all that and working so hard? And then she tells me the story about how she she was working one day, and my grandfather had two wives. It was my grandmother and another lady, and my grandmother was working hard to send my mom to school, and she asked this other lady to help her with some of the work, and that other lady was refusing and kind of making fun of her and saying, no, why don't you get your daughter to come and help you? Why are you sending her to school? Get her to come help you. um, so she tells me this story that she was this was the situation with her and this other woman really making fun of her and kind of um, making fun of her for sending my mother to school. And my grandmother says, yeah, isn't this why I did all that? And it's crazy that she remembered that at that particular time, however many years later now. Um, and to understand, she comes from a very, very small remote village, a very, very small remote village, and to have, made it out of that village. And now she's here with us in a whole nother continent. She can have whatever she wants. She was having whatever she wanted and just enjoying the fruits of her labor. Um, it was just remarkable. It was remarkable that all these years later, she could look at what she did and say, this is where that took me, and this is how far I've come from all of that, from being mocked and ridiculed. Um, and so yeah, she was blessed. My grandmother was very blessed. She outlived all her siblings, even her younger ones. Um, she outlived so many people at 97, to the point where for years people would, relatives and close friends would die, and my mom would get the call that so and so died, and my mom would be so sad, and she'd tell me and say, I can't tell Mama, I can't tell her this, just because you didn't want her to be sad. Even when her brother died, I remember when we finally told her, she was heartbroken for a very long time. Her younger brother, this is. Um, Mama lived a good life. She lived a good life. She worked hard, but she definitely enjoyed and reaped the benefits um, of her work. She was blessed. She had one child, just my mother, just a one child. And the story is that her father, the chief, because she served him so well and was such a good daughter to him, that the story was that he actually blessed her and told her that even though you have just but one child, that one child is going to be like 10. And yeah, it really happened. Um, she was blessed. She told me about my grandfather, um, who I look exactly like. She told me about him. She told me about how he loved children. Um, she loved him so much. There was a time she told me if he was still alive, she wouldn't be here with us. I'm like, really? She's like, no, I would be with him. um, she told me about her father. Her father was a fashionable guy. Uh, he was very fashionable. He loved to cut his hair a certain type of way, you know, and stay fly. Um, she told me about, you know, even how her work was and how it went. Um, so not only did she have these farms, she also would sell things, foods, snacks, things like that. She was actually one of the first people in that village to get a, what do you call it? To get a freezer and to start selling things from the freezer. Um, and so she would make like ice cream or like um, little ice pops and would sell it. And she told me about how, she really kind of had this formula and, she could make it really well. And then after her, other people would try to like copy her style and, that it would never quite work. It wasn't as good as hers. They would dilute their stuff, some more. But she knew the right, mix for it. Um, yeah, she told me about those stories. She said even now, if she went back to Nigeria, she would have people coming to her asking for ice cream. Um, and that was like what people knew. Part of what people knew her for was that she sold those. Um, she was industrious. She was definitely industrious. She worked hard with her hands. Proverbs 31. Um, and she definitely took care of her family. She Funny thing. So I mentioned that my grandfather had multiple wives. She told me that she was actually the one that told him to go get his second wife. And I was shocked. I was like, why would you tell him to do such a thing? And she said, she loved him. And at that time, it was like a status symbol to have multiple wives. And if you didn't have multiple wives, it was like you were nobody. And so knowing how that might come back and affect her, she loved him so much, she told him to go do it so that he would be would be you know considered that person, to be of more value now. um that's the type of woman she was. She was very down to earth. She was very down to earth. She was very easy to get along with. um Funny, had a great personality. Yeah, she was a really amazing woman. I want to show you some videos. I'm gonna play some videos and just show you a little bit of who she was.
eguru
Eguru.
deba ọkpụ
Mm-hmm.
kan si ede sobi nebe eguru nina koti
Mm-hmm.
leyigbo bani
Ọmọ Kim.
ọmọ ẹsẹ orí oguru ìsọkò ìbọn fìrí ọmọ yíyọ sáyé èkìtì ọmọ elémùpé èkó yìí
Mm-hmm.
ọmọ ẹkùtà ní kẹrẹmú
Mm-hmm.
báàní ni
Bani.
ó ti kò sẹnu mọtò gbàgbé ni
Oh, it's all good, Mama.
owó tókè ó tó rà pa ẹ bọ ó yà sókè àgbá
Mm.
òkè àgbá nígùn lékè kí lọ́dún pẹ̀rẹ̀pẹ̀rẹ̀pẹ̀rẹ̀ kí túlé náà lójijì rò ní lákàmọ́ ẹni èkìkí nìnìnìnìnì èkìkí rí ni mẹ́sìn mọ́
Aw. It's all good, Mama. Kò sí wàhálà.
èkìkí ní dá
Ó dáa.
ní dá
Mama, èwo ni kí n bá yín rà?
ọmọ mi yìí ni
Èyí?
èyí ṣé ṣe ẹ̀dá bá ẹkùn lórí bá
Ó dáa. Okay.
kàrí yọ wékèmílà
No,
èyí ni
ìyẹn náà ni màá rà.
èyí kún ni lórí
Ó kún ni lórí.
ọ dá lórí ọ̀nà dáadáa
Okay. Eléyìí ńkọ́?
èyí ni mo mèsì dé mo sì mè é dájú ọ̀rìn lórí èyí rẹ bẹ́ẹ̀ tẹ̀yẹ rẹ ti rí gan-an ni
Òun náà lẹ fẹ́. Okay.
ọ̀nà mo fẹ́
She wants me to buy her a hat
ọ̀nà mo fẹ́
like her daughter. Okay, fine. Fine. Okay, my buying around. Let's see.
bẹ́ẹ̀ kẹ́mi tó dé ìjàmbá ni.
So, in that video, she. So when I was living with my parents, she would her room was next to mine, and so a lot of times she would just knock on my door and come in there and just start talking to me. And me and my grandmother were great. We were close. I actually learned Yoruba here at the University of Texas because of her, so that we could communicate more. Um, but you have to understand she comes from a very different time and culture. And so the Yoruba that I learned and that I know is regular, kind of Yoruba. I can conversate with, you know, most people. But my grandmother at, 97, she came from a time and in a place and a culture that was very, very different. And so she has her own dialect. She has her, just not even just that and the dialect of where she comes from, that village, but also the culture is just different. Her whole lifestyle is different from what mine is. I didn't grow up in a farm, in an agricultural society. I don't know what a rake or a hoe or whatever. I don't even know what those words would mean would be in Yoruba. So like there are a lot of things that she would tell me, and probably about half of it was lost in translation because I don't understand the types of words that she uses, um, or her dialect. And so in this video, I think I had asked her. There's something in our culture that is called the oriki. And so it's like a person's salutation or um, their specific names and salutations and titles, that are it's a cultural thing. It has nothing to do with profession. It has nothing to do with anything. It's just a very cultural thing where they give you these names. Um, these they're not nicknames. They're oh man, how do I describe Oriki? They are really, yeah, they're like a salute. You're bigging up this person. You know, you see them come in and you start saying their oriki. Um, you start bigging them up and giving them this salutation that's very, very specific to them. Um, and so I think I had asked her to what mine was, and I wanted to record it. And so she started saying it, and and then she she says she forgets, and that's you see our dynamic. She was kind of a little sad, and I'm like, nah, it's all good. Um, yeah, and so she was reciting what my Oriki is. Um, it's like so and so. You're the son of this and that. You're the guy that does this and that. You're the great blah 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 blah. It's that sort of a thing. That's what an Oriki is. It's your cultural um, name or salute or um, greeting, and it's very specific to you. So she was telling me what mine was. She forgot it, and oh, and then before that, I think she had come in. My grandmother loved to do this a lot. My mom would get these catalogs, these like fashion women's catalogs or purses and whatever, just clothes and whatever. And my grandmother loved to look through those. She would look through these catalogs and then she would come to me, and if she saw anything that she wanted, she would say, "Hey, can you buy this for me?" And so what you see in that video is she's pointing to this hat and in the catalog, and she's telling me that she likes it. I should buy it for her. And I'm like, all right, cool. Um, yeah, that was how our relationship was. Well, we were really close.